I'm research analyst at the Institute of Regional Studies. I welcome you all on behalf of the President, Institute of Regional Studies, Ambassador Nadeem Riaz, for joining us in today's webinar on Bangladesh-China relations in the changing regional dynamics. Institute of Regional Studies was established in 1982, and our major focus is the research on South Asian region and China. As we know, in the existing world order, relations between countries are based on national interests and geopolitical necessities. China's influence in South Asia has significantly grown over the years. Bangladesh-China relations in particular are now more robust and comprehensive. China has been consistently supporting Bangladesh for its infrastructure projects. And currently, they are also forging and developing their cooperation on handling coronavirus pandemic. And keeping this background, today we have invited 4 eminent speakers from China, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Our President Iris will be here. He's in a meeting and he'll be joining us soon. And he is sending regards to all the speakers. Our first speaker is Ambassador, Her Excellency Ambassador Naghmana A Hashmi. She has served in Pakistan. She has served as Pakistan's ambassador to China from 2019 to 2020. She has served as Pakistan's ambassador to the European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Ireland. She had earlier served in Beijing from 2003 to 2007 as deputy head of mission. She has also served in Denmark, France, and Indonesia. In Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she served in various capacities in the Department of Human Resource and Career Planning, United Nations, Policy Planning and Public Diplomacy, and the Organization of Islamic Conference. During her stay in China, she proactively promoted and further strengthened deep-rooted friendship with China, cemented economic and trade ties, and took concrete steps to promote cultural and people-to-people contacts between the two countries. She personally supervised the measures to protect the lives of Pakistani nationals who were stranded in Wuhan and other parts of the China during COVID pandemic. I give the floor to our first speaker here. Over to you, Madam. Okay.
Unmute, correct. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Could you please put down your volume, madam? Could you please put down your volume? Could you help her, please?
Ambassador Naghmana, you are not audible.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, good. Sorry, these are computer glitches. I am quite tech savvy, but not as tech savvy as some of the younger lot. So once again, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all the participants. I would first and foremost like to thank the Institute of Regional Studies for inviting me to speak on this very important topic of China-Bangladesh relations. I will try and just skim over some of the issues and just leave it at that. And I do not have any intentions of going into facts and figures and details because I'm sure the other speakers will also dilate on this subject, and any gaps that are left, we can discuss that in the question answer session. As you're all well aware that the geography, location, and history of a country or a nation, be it big or small, can be a blessing and can be problematic as well. The countries of South Asia, including Bangladesh, including Pakistan, and other members of South Asia, are blessed with very good location, very good history, very good geography. But for centuries, this area has also been the center of interest for nations and countries beyond the region and beyond our borders. We've seen this over and over again, but particularly from the second half of 20th century, we have, for one reason or the other, have been I wouldn't say the battleground, but a place of competition where various big powers have been trying to vie for influence. As regards Bangladesh, when it was established in 1971, we are all well aware that for reasons known to all of us and because of its geography also surrounded on three sides by India, it had obviously very friendly, very good relations, and it was depending a lot on its a bigger neighbor. But at that time, we also know that China was still trying to establish itself. It was trying to strengthen itself and was therefore not proactively establishing its influence or beyond its borders, because it was trying to consolidate its economy, its political system, and focusing on the development of China first and foremost in order to, of course, meet their two centennial goals, one of which, of course, they have met this year, which is taking China out of absolute poverty by the end of 2020, which is commendable because despite the corona pandemic, they have achieved this. And the second, of course, is to turn China into a middle-income country by 2041, which they seem to be well on their tracks to be. So before the rise of China, things, I would say, were a little bit more simple for countries of the region, particularly for want of a better word, for smaller countries of the region. India, as you know, was securely in the Soviet bloc and later, allied with the Russians, and the only superpower that was in the world was America. And then we saw how the American influence increased in India, and that also brought a lot of the South Asian countries to align their policies with this changing trend. But the speed and the extent of the rise of China has bewildered everybody. Now, the rise of China, of course, is something which is not unexpected. We've been talking for 200 years about the rise of China. But in my humble opinion, what has actually taken the world by surprise is not that China would rise, but at the speed and to the extent and with the strength that it has risen. And after consolidating its economy and its internal issues, we now see China looking beyond its borders, but its approach is very different to that of, let us say, the USA or the other Western countries. Its approach is of what they call the shared future and the shared destiny of mankind, and therefore the concept of BRI, which is development and peace through connectivity. Now, like Pakistan, the Chinese also believe that you need to have peace within, but also peace without, which means that you also need to have peace with countries along your borders. And that is why we have seen that very early in the, after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, China quickly settled all its border disputes, land border disputes with all the countries, and the only pending one is that with India. So coming to the Pakistan, the China-Bangladesh relations, as I said earlier, in the beginning, Bangladesh was more closely aligned with the Indians, and by extension, you would say, with the Soviet Union. But with the rise of China, the US-China rivalry or competition, let us say, for influence in the region has become extremely important and imminent. And that is why we have seen that India shifted its policy of allying with Russia more now to align itself with the US and with the Western countries, and therefore we see the nuclear deal and the economic connections that they have with them, and the recent visit of the foreign ministers of foreign defense ministers of USA to India. And the reason for that, of course, is to prep it up as a major counterbalance for the Chinese. And in this, as they say, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. In this case, I think it's the grass is not actually suffering. If I can refer to the smaller nations in South Asia, they have benefited in many ways from the rise of China. Because, as I said, the Chinese philosophy of influencing countries or development and peace is very different from the Western conception. Therefore, we've seen that although the Bangladesh-China relations had a rocky start, China did not recognize Bangladesh right away when it was established in 1971. In fact, China was used as one of its only vetoes against the membership of Bangladesh in the UN. But very soon, we have seen that over the last 45 years, Bangladesh and China relationship has grown closer and closer. Particularly if you look at the last 2 decades, it has been a mutually beneficial relationship. Today, Bangladesh and China have a series of high-level visits. You see several very important agreements between Bangladesh and China. There was a time when Bangladesh's biggest trading partner was India, but we've seen that since 2014, when China surpassed India as the biggest trading partner of Bangladesh, things have only been improving. Similarly, when China came out with the concept of One Belt, One Road, and which is now called the Belt and Road Initiative, Bangladesh became a very important part of this initiative. And if I am not wrong, and if I remember correctly, even before this, in the early 2000s, there was this talk of connecting Kunming with Chittagong and Calcutta and Dhaka, so giving access to Bangladesh directly to the Yunnan province of China, and also giving China access to the Bay of Bengal, and a much shorter and a much better route, both in terms of security, particularly maritime security, and so the concept of connectivity with Bangladesh predates the Belt and Road Initiative. And then we saw when President Xi Jinping went to Bangladesh for his historic visit in 2016, they signed a very important, if I'm not wrong, it's $26 billion package for infrastructure development, port development, bridges, roads, and I have a whole list of projects that were signed, but I really would not want to go into the details. But the concept is that a lot of economic activity and Bangladesh's development was being in a very peaceful manner, not in a hegemonistic manner, not in an intimidating manner, was being supported by China. Similarly, we saw that China has allowed duty-free access of Bangladeshi exports into China, which actually has now surpassed, if I'm not wrong, US dollar $6 to $7 billion a year, the benefit that Bangladesh gets because of this exemption. And similarly, we have seen a growing level of cultural, commercial activity between Bangladesh and China. Similarly, particularly if you look at 2020, which was a very, very difficult year for everybody around the world, China was the first country that came to help Bangladesh, like it did Pakistan and other countries of South Asia. In fact, it allowed one of its vaccine companies now to do their third trials in Bangladesh, and they have said that Bangladesh would be given priority when it comes to making the vaccine available for the public. Similarly, we saw that China sent its medical teams, its doctors and experts to help Bangladesh fight the COVID pandemic. They also provided them with PPEs in large numbers that further cemented the friendship and the trust between the two countries. China is the only strategic partner of Bangladesh. And so the whole relationship seems to be evolving towards a meaningful, mutually beneficial relationship. But when you compare that with Bangladesh's relationship with India, you see that it started at a very very good and positive note, but it has not been consistent, not had a regular upward trajectory like its relationship with China has been. We've seen ups and downs in its relationship with India, and I would not quote examples from the past because there is no need. All of you are very learned people here and are very well aware of the history of this relationship. But recently we have seen that the passing of the Citizenship Act by India did lead to, I wouldn't say, there's some irritation between the two countries because there is this fear in Bangladesh that this would again open the doors of Bangladesh to a deluge of Muslim refugees, and already stuck with refugees from Rohingya. Bangladesh may not have the capacity, physical and financial, to deal with this situation. And to compare the two relationships, I would say the difference is quite obvious. While one country is not being hegemonistic, it does not want to, by force or coerce the countries in South Asia to side by it due to intimidation and other tactics, but is developing what you would call a positive interdependence of economic linkages, of people-to-people contacts, of intellectual linkages, to extend its influence or to grow beneficially together. But as I said in the beginning, the relationship, of course, looks set to grow further, but it cannot stay immune to the fast developing geostrategic, geopolitical, and geoeconomic situation in our region. And it is true of all the other countries of South Asia, be it Bhutan, be it Nepal, be it Sri Lanka. You have seen that China has slowly and gradually carved a niche for itself in this region for development and peace and prosperity, and to develop their concept of a shared future for humanity. So the challenge for smaller countries of South Asia, for want of a better word, personally, I believe no country is small. Every country has its own advantages and own strong points. So all countries are equal. But for lack of a better word, the smaller countries of South Asia have to watch out to see how this competition of the US and China, be it economic, military, social, plays out in the region. And all the countries of South Asia have to modulate their policies and their strategies accordingly. There is no doubt that the West feels that it can prep up India as the main rival to China to stop its advancement and its influence in the region. I think Bangladesh is doing very well, like a lot of the other countries so far. But I think all of us need to watch the developments very, very closely. I will leave it at that for the moment because my 10 minutes are over, but we can continue the discussion in the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Ambassador Naghmana, for your illuminating presentation. Ambassador Naghmana has highlighted some pertinent points about the advantages of the geography of South Asian region and how this region is mired in differences, and they are not integrating for the collective growth. But Bangladesh and China are Bangladesh, China are establishing healthy economic relations, and that would benefit both countries. With this, I now move to our second speaker from Bangladesh. Professor Shahab Enam Khan has joined us from Bangladesh. Professor Khan is teaching in the Department of International Relations at the Jahangir University in Dhaka since September 2004. He has served as advisor, consultant, and board member of the various international organizations. Professor Khan has served as a member of various high-level committees formed by the government of Bangladesh. He has been credited for drafting several key political policy documents for the government of Bangladesh, including the National Broadcast Policy 2014 and the National Counterterrorism Strategy. Professor Khan holds a master's degree in international political economy from the University of Manchester. Over to you, Professor Khan.
Thank you.
Welcome you to the webinar.
Thank you very much. Am I audible enough?
Yes.
Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. I mean, particularly every time I come and speak to Institute, and I really feel that we have a lot of things to debate and discuss. At least we live in a region where the cost of non-cooperation is never factored in our bilateral or multilateral affairs. And perhaps this is one of the least integrated regions in the world, paradoxically a region which has the highest concentration of people, highest concentration of wealth, highest concentration of resources, which can be tapped in for the collective benefit. And that's exactly why we need to speak more than ever, at least to find out the solutions to our existing problems, because the coming generations won't be waiting for us to come up with the solutions if we come up with the solutions before they come up. So essentially, it is our responsibility to find some sort of comfortable ground for all the countries in the region, whether it is China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and name anyone, even if you take the case of Myanmar. Even if you look at Bangladesh-Myanmar relationship at the moment, I mean, we're now bearing almost like 1.1 million refugees sitting in Bangladesh, but we don't go for hostility. And perhaps we have learned from the past, and particularly in 1971, as Ambassador was speaking, even many of us were refugees back in that. So we understand that particular genesis and the pain that these Rohingyas and refugees are facing and staying here. So essentially what makes us to understand the whole regional gamut of relationship is through the relationship of prosperity. And hence the economic plays the most important role in the case of Bangladesh. I mean, I often tell my friends in Delhi or in Islamabad, or even in Beijing and Washington, that let us not look into Bangladesh through the prism of one specific country. Rather, if you look at Bangladesh's economic structure, you will find quite an interesting gamut, because, of course, China is the largest exporter to Bangladesh. I mean, in terms of Bangladesh-China relationship, or perhaps Bangladesh's import basket. On the other hand, the US is the largest importer from Bangladesh. In terms of Bangladesh's export basket. And even the West is another critical factor for Bangladesh's economic stability and growth. So we have quite a large portfolio to manage, starting from all the way to Beijing to Washington, and of course, London, Moscow, everything. But the problem lies is if there is a tussle going on between Washington and Moscow, certainly will affect our international trade. And that's exactly where we think that balancing between the United States and China remains as a paramount or critical importance for Bangladesh. Now, Delhi has always been historically a friend to Bangladesh, and definitely since it is not a question of one particular phenomena, but perhaps Bangladesh being what we call India locked for many years, and we have a greater border relationship and trade with them. And perhaps we are the largest trading partner in terms of India-Bangladesh relationship for India. And that's exactly where we also think that the relationship should be translated into an economic relationship rather than putting too much focus on security or defense. Because at the end of the day, Bangladesh is the only country that doesn't have any war or any kind of tension of war with any of its neighbors, particularly India and Myanmar. And the only remaining neighbor that we have is Bay of Bengal. Unfortunately, we can't fight Bay of Bengal. And that's exactly where the environment comes in. And this is another ground for us, apart from the economic relationship, climate change, environment, ecosystem services are, again, a great deal of energy that takes from us. Obviously, if you look at the climate change, the rising of sea, or perhaps even if you look at the fisheries and the way the coral islands are dying and the coral system is dying, perhaps we are now creating a lot of dead zone. And in dead zones, it is not only Bangladesh's problem, but it is also a problem for the Indians as well as the Myanmar, Thai, and Malaysians and everyone. So we have to fight once again, not alone, but we have to take others on board. So therefore, we cannot really see hostility or cannot afford to see hostility in the neighborhood. Because again, if you look at Bangladesh's population, 170 million population, and 170 million population in a very small concentrated geography is certainly, one hand, it is a powerful thing. On the other hand, this is a weakness too. So now we want to convert these 170 million people into a powerful tool. And if you look at Bangladesh's indicators over the past few years, I mean, in terms of gender, in terms of mortality, infant mortality, in terms of hygiene, in terms of access to medical care, has significantly improved and has taken us much ahead of many of our neighbors. Now, are we very proud of that? No, of course not, because we also believe that if these phenomena doesn't exist in the neighboring countries, certainly our alone going forward will not be helpful. Of course, any stable India, stable Pakistan, stable Afghanistan is of our interest. And therefore, we would always like to see that the Chinese engagement in these countries should be equitable as it is equitable with us. I mean, we get to hear this blabbering sometimes. I'm sorry for the language, but I often get to see this blabbering in the international media that we are getting into the debt trap. Well, the debt trap doesn't happen like that. Even if you look at Bangladesh's international debt portfolio, even if you see that the Chinese contribution is less than 6%. And that's what I would say that the Chinese pragmatism. Why this is a Chinese pragmatism? They jumped into the business, private sector investment, rather than just coming up and increasing our debt portfolio. Now, this is exactly when the Indo-Pacific strategy came to us. And our response was quite clear by saying that if it is all about infrastructure development, if it is all about investment, if it is all about joint venture and stuff, then only it makes sense to us. And we were pretty much clear about it. And the foreign minister was very blunt about it. And obviously the government's position was quite clear about it. Now, that means that again, when it comes to the choice between what often comes up as a very hysteric notion between Indo-Pacific and BRI, I mean, there's nothing called either or, it has to be both. The very simple reason is we sit in a very interesting geography, if you look at. We are in the bottom of South Asia, we are in the top of Southeast Asia, henceforth we are the pivot. Now, therefore, we are one of the countries that actually sits with Myanmar, India, and obviously the Bay of Bengal. So this makes us one very interesting case for the global community. And we are very aware of that. I mean, even if you look at, if I see Dhaka from the prism of Beijing, obviously it comes starting from all the way through Chittagong hill tracks down to Thailand. One stretch which often becomes, to me, I mean, being an international relations student, often I consider it as a Kosovo syndrome. If it is left unattended, unresolved, and I won't be surprised if I see that Kosovo syndrome rising over there. Even if you look at the bilateral relationship between Bangladesh and India and Nepal, sometimes we get trouble with the very basic trade problems. And are these a political problem? No. These are basic bottlenecks in terms of our bureaucratic systems we inherited from the colonial ghosts. So henceforth, what happens often is that the bilateral trade are significantly hampered by the incapable, often what we call the bureaucracy, if you say the field officials, standards, SOPs, these are sometimes not working. And what we have to do, again, get back to SARC. I mean, I have always been a great advocate for SARC and BIMSTEC by saying that, look, you already have a regional platform. If you just get rid of SARC, what do you have then? Then you're going to create many fragmented regional institutions, and then you become bombarded with hundreds of institutional mandates having overlapping jurisdictions. And then it makes no sense. Even sometimes we get to hear this very fancy word called the Quad. If you look at this Quad, I mean, you have the Australians sitting like 10,000 kilometers. They're not going to come here swimming. If you look at Japan, doesn't have any land boundary with China. It's only that the Chinese and the Indians, they have the boundary. And the Americans, they still have the hundreds and thousands of square kilometer away. So practically, if you look at it as a concept, this is a fantastic concept. But again, how practical that will be essentially lies in harmonizing the interest of this country. And then if you look at RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, I mean, the US pulled out, making China to come up as the largest beholder of a regional platform. And in RCEP, you have all these fantastic countries, growing economies are there, including the Australians. Now, if you have this RCEP functioning for greater economic cooperation, then it is very difficult to see the modalities of Quad in the long term. Only two countries who pulled out from this whole gamut of regional cooperation is India and the United States. And I'm quite sure, I mean, Biden administration will make an effort to come back to both TPP and RCEP. And that's exactly where we are pretty happy that if this economic venture continues, then this is good for everyone, including Pakistan. And Pakistan's economy needs more injection of trade, investment stuff. And that's exactly where we also would like to see that more economic cooperation through multilateral, bilateral, and obviously through we have a greater participation in one common institutions called OIC. And of course, OIC is another factor where we see that we have more commonalities than divergences. And I would like to rest my case by saying that the Chinese interest in South Asia is paramount. And of course, our interest in China is paramount too. So it is not a one-way coming, or perhaps this is not a zero-sum game. We are very aware of the fact that what is happening in Ladakh. We are very aware of the fact what's going on in the domestic politics, thanks to social media. This is no longer 90s. This is no longer 2008, 10, 11, 12, 15. This is 2020. And one simple 5.1-inch screen can give you all the information that you need, sometimes misinformation, sometimes fake information. That's the reason people like we survive by saying which one is correct and which one is not correct. So perhaps what we need to do with all this information diffused in the hands of the youth, hands of the people, and hands of the marginalized ones we never thought about. And these are the people who will come and make the decision. Hence, the economy is going to make the decision, market is going to make the decision. Now, the choice is very clear. Are you going to be with the market or you're not going to be with the market? If you're not with the market, of course, your economy during the post-COVID period is going to have a surge. I mean, definitely a greater limp. And don't forget that the West and the rest of the world will now become much more sanitized, which means this is also a racial sanitization will come up. Nationalist sanitization will come up. And in that case, if you think that we are going to have a lot of remittance coming from the Middle East and the West, probably that's going to be ambitious within a decade of time. And hence, these are the people who will come back. So how are we going to accommodate these people? And this is not Bangladesh's problem only. This is not Pakistan's problem only. This is India's problem. So we have to wake up. I mean, again, I understand that there is a rise of hard-hitting Iron Man across the region. We now have a fantastic cricketer being prime minister. We now have a chaiwala as prime minister. And we have subsequently, for last 3 decades, have the female leadership in this country. And perhaps if you look at us, we have done much better. And that's exactly where we are very grateful to our neighbor, starting from all the way to Afghanistan down to Myanmar, even if we have learned in a bad way, but we have learned something, and that we consider as a lesson. And lesson is always invaluable. And with these invaluable lessons, and perhaps this is where I would like to conclude by saying that, trust me, we have more solutions than problems. And the problem is we look at the half glass empty. We don't look at the half glass full. So this is the reason the Chinese would always come and say that the half glass is warm and let us make it much warmer so that your health is better. And if you look at Xi Jinping's 14 points, and then he clearly articulated what he wants. He wants to be a global leader. He wants to do a shared humanity. He wants to have a better equitable international relations. You don't see that the Chinese are going to go and fight everywhere. That's exactly the diametrically opposite than the American military industrial complex. And that's precisely the reason why they're becoming much more economically viable nation than most of the other nations. And then again, you're going to see that Biden is going to have a lot of struggle once he's in power, once he's back in the White House. And you're going to see absolutely phenomenal changes in the US foreign policy. And I can see that Nabila is sending me a polite way of saying, stop, you have question and answer to do. I'm being grateful, but certainly we should aim for having a better perception about everyone rather than having a wrong perception about good things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Shahab Enam Khan, for such a detailed and enlightening presentation on the relations in the region. Basically, you didn't only discuss the relations between China and Bangladesh, but you also shed light on Bangladesh. Bangladesh believe in cooperation and keeping balance with other powers as well. With this, I would like to move to our third speaker, our third distinguished speaker from China. We have Professor Lin Minwang. Professor Lin Minwang is also assistant dean of the Institute of International Studies at Fudan University. His main research areas include international relations in South Asia and international relations theory. Recently, he has published widely on China's new diplomacy, geopolitics in Indo-Pacific. His papers published in peer-reviewed journals such as World Economic Politics, Foreign Affairs, and Journal of Contemporary Asia Studies. He has also authored 2 books. One is Choosing War and the BRI and Geopolitics in South Asia. Both are published in World Affairs Press. I give the floor to Professor Minwang. Can you hear me, Professor?
Okay, can you hear me?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join this webinar. I think the topics we discussed today is the relation between China and Bangladesh, and we put these bilateral relations into the background. This is the changing regional dynamic in South Asia. So I want to divide my speech into two parts. One is the changing regional dynamic in South Asia.
Dr. Lin, can you please please be a little loud?
Oh. And
yeah, increase your volume, please. Or use it without the earphones.
Okay.
It will be better if you kindly use the computer audio.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. First, I will go to the changing in regional dynamic. My personal understanding is that currently South Asia seems to be gradually forming two opposing camps. One camp is United States and Indian, and the other camp is China and Pakistan. And maybe someday in the future, Russia will join the latter campus. And Bangladesh is just between the two campuses, just waiting and see and try to keep some distance from different campuses. The main reasons why I say this is emerging divisions in this region. The main reasons is because of the Indian new strategy toward China and the United States. You know, at the beginning of this year, when the COVID-19 pandemic has been outbreak, Indian strategy allies has changed its methods, diplomatic methods towards China, and the Indian side mistakenly believes China suffers domestic and foreign difficulty, and this will provide India with a greater opportunity to replace China. For this reason, India does not hesitate to follow United States, to use the pandemic to discredit China, and even push the international community to decoupling from China economy, and also try to pushing on the China-Indian borders. China has been offers diplomatic negotiation many times with the Indian side, but the Indian side ignores China's offers. So that is the background why China sent the army, sent the troops into the borders after 1993. So, you know, after that, there is a border conflict. India took the situation, the border situations, as an excuse, tried further to anti-China's campaign. Why? My personal understanding is India just want to cozy up United States. He tried to show he is the alliance of United States to anti-China's. So that's why at the end of the October's, India signed the agreement with the United States, the BECA. You know, this agreement, I think, it signaling Indian side has abandoned its strategic autonomy, and you just use China's threat as the excuse. After India signed all the measures, the defense agreement with the United States, it's difficult to say India is not the non-alliance countries. It's actually becomes the alliance of the United States. So this is the background. And also this is why I say South Asia is divided into two camps, because Indian side has changed its foreign policies and also changed its policy towards the United States and towards China. So how will this situation develop in the futures? I think after the Biden's elections, when he comes into powers, it will have some negative impact on the Indian-United States relations. I think the main reasons may be because of the political values. Indian and the United States governments will have different views on the, especially on democracy. You know, when Trump was the Trump administrations, he adopted the double standards towards the democracies. So that's why this is another become the point of frictions in Indian-United States relations. But you know, for Biden administrations, he personally want to recover the source of the United States. Let's clearly signal that he want to unite Indian who behaves on the democratic standards to behave like real democracies. So because of the difference in these values, and he was not satisfied with the Modi government. And also because the Biden government has very good relations. His team have very good relations with Beijing in the past. And I think for most of the Chinese experts, they say the Biden administration will be much soft towards China. Even in the long run, we are not so so optimism about China-United States relations. But at the short time, I think the Biden government will be more soft towards China. This will have a great impact on the China-Indian relations, especially in terms of Indian side. So this is the situation, I think, why we call this is a changing regional dynamic in South Asia. And the second point, I want to turn to China-Bangladesh relations. I find when I join the discussion in South Asian countries, many scholars say that BRI has a very deep geopolitical intentions. I think it's partly true, but first you have to know, basically, BRI is an economy initiate. When BCIM economic corridor was proposed by by Prime Minister Li Keqiang in 2030, you know, this concept has been proposed by the academic for more than 10 years. So this is the natural development. I don't think Beijing has a very deep geopolitical intentions to use BRI as a strategy tools to dominate South Asia, to have any deeper geopolitical intention in this region. And I don't think China like to dominate this region. Actually, you know, in the past, Chinese government is not interested in South Asia. When President Xi took office, Chinese government has changed its mind. And for the reasons why there are so many Chinese companies has been rushed into South Asia. The main reasons, I think, because of the domestic markets in China, the competition between the enterprise is already very competitive. So especially for Chinese infrastructure enterprise, they have to go abroad to find a job. So, and also, you know, for these infrastructure projects, they are usually very expensive. And you know, the political situation in South Asian countries is usually unstable. So when Chinese company choose some countries, to invest this project, they have to find these countries should have a very good political relation with China. So you can see when President Xi and Modi has the informal summit in Indian relations was on the progress. So in the next year, the Chinese company launched into Indian markets. So you can see Chinese company has always has the political sense for Chinese foreign relations. And for my personal understanding, why Bangladesh has become a key focus, it became a key destination for BRI projects, because I think it's a very important reason is because of the economic performance of the Bangladesh. You know, China has the development experience. That is, you have to have a close integration with the emerging markets. So that is why China have developed very close economic relations with ASEAN countries. So based on this experience, and also you know, the Bangladesh economic growth rates in the last past 10 years is more than 60%. This is the highest among the emerging markets, among the developing countries. So many Chinese enterprise was very positive. They have a confidence in Bangladesh domestic prospects. So this is why Chinese investment flourished into Bangladesh. And the second, I think, is because the Chinese government is paying more and more attention to South Asia. You know, after President Xi Jinping's visit to Bangladesh in 2016, and the country was upgraded to strategic partners, and also Bangladesh government officially to join the BRI initiate. And because of this development has made the Chinese company have confidence to develop in Bangladesh. So I know when talking about the BRI in South Asia, we cannot get rid of geopolitical factors. You know, when every time when I have a meeting in Bangladesh last year, I was also being asked questions. How can South Asian country participate in a BRI without offending India? And my personal thinking is that because Indian oppose the BRI initiate, actually it has provided much opportunity for other countries to gain the economic opportunity from Chinese company. You know, India has the future markets. Indian's markets is always the first choice for investment by Chinese company. This is because of the Modi government's attitude towards BRI, and also the relation between China and India. So many Chinese companies take Bangladesh, take the Pakistan, take Nepal, Sri Lanka as the try to replace the Indian markets, because all the South Asian countries, they have the same conditions, like you have populated density, and also they have very huge markets potentials to development. So this is why South Asia has become the Chinese government, Chinese company has been brought to these areas. So I think my time maybe is up, so I will be still here. I will discuss then later. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Minwang, for the detailed presentation. Before wasting further time, we now move to our fourth speaker. We have Dr. SUJIT Kumar Datta from Bangladesh. Dr. SUJIT Kumar Datta is an associate professor in the Department of International Relations at Chittagong University, Bangladesh. Dr. Datta did his PhD from the School of Political Science and Public Administration at Shandong University, China. Before that, he had worked at the BRAC Training Division as a faculty member. Dr. Datta has authored several articles and books chapters on different issues in the renowned international and national peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Datta has presented several research papers in international seminars and conferences in China, India, Malaysia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. In the COVID-19 pandemic period, he had attended several international webinars as a resource person in several countries. He wrote a book named Belt and Road Country Overview, Bangladesh, along with his supervisor in 2019. Now I give the floor to Professor Datta. Thank you so much, Professor SUJIT Kumar Datta, for joining us. I give you the floor. Over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Professor, you are not audible.
I am not audible? Hello? Hello?
But we can hear him.
Hello?
I can hear you, Sujit. Carry on.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. Firstly, let me thank the organizer, Institute of Regional Studies, Pakistan, to invite me here. And thanks to all panelists for their outstanding, valuable, informative and speech regarding today's issues. And I'm very much delighted to be here with my respected teacher, Professor Shahab, ex-chairman, Department of International Relations, Jahangir University, and Bangladesh. And today's webinar on Bangladesh-China relations in the changing regional dynamics. So actually, Bangladesh has no visible disputes with China. In a complex geographical competition in South Asia, China stood up against Bangladesh during Bangladesh independence war in 1971. Though China has established diplomatic relations with Bangladesh in 1975, but now China is a key partner in the development of Bangladesh. Bangladesh-China relations almost can grow without any kind of limitations. The main China's interests in Bangladesh are geostrategical and geopolitical interests, boosting Belt and Road Initiative in Bangladesh, political economy in purpose of augmenting political ties, deepening economic relations, increasing trade and investments, aggregate grant and aids, ensure Chinese strings of policy strategy, defense and security cooperations, protecting the political and economic investment those China already has in Bangladesh. At present, China is taking a significant place in South Asian countries because of India's big brother attitudes towards small states in South Asian regions. Nepal and Sri Lanka have already turned to China in the South Asian regions. India may be trying to be more close to Bangladesh because India may be realizing the lack of relations with the neighboring countries. If India doesn't change its big brother attitudes towards small states in these regions, it will not be able to resolve the crisis in relations by simple discussing or speaking good things. In the COVID situations of 2019, the close relationship between Bangladesh and China on the vaccine issue has been evident in the many cases. Bangladesh diplomacy has played an important role in maintaining a balanced relationship between China and India. If Bangladesh is acting its own national interests, which is good for us, and that will not bind any of our any other friends. Since the present government is very close related with geographically large neighboring country India, the close relationship with another traditional large neighbor can cause discomfort as a defense deal with India to cope with India's response to buy 2 submarines from China in 2016. Bangladesh is now an invest-hungry country which financing various mega projects. On the other hand, Bangladesh is transforming least developed country to middle-income countries will gradually become difficult to get debt relief gradually. Increasing load shedding, lack of gas electricity in the industry, and unemployment for thousands of educated in every year are big challenges for Bangladesh. Multilateralism is one of the most important features of Chinese foreign policy. China didn't want to enter into the geopolitical complexity of the South Asia. They don't feel that Bangladesh-India close relationship is a barrier for trade. It is also important that China always focuses economic aspirations that they are giving importance to development process. Bangladesh already transformed in middle income country to low income country, which is very much related with Chinese policy to be adopted from garment industry and foreign remittance oriented economy to industrialization economy. Bangladesh needs investment and international commercial communication infrastructure. Since China is moving to the super level of industrializations, it needs to send it additional industries and non-technical technology to developing country. At the same time, China made its own industrializations with Japan's second-tier technology and industry. The same model also fit for Bangladesh. Today's Bangladesh can be China at the same time to using those types of technology. Bangladesh may be the beneficiaries of the Chinese machines and technology and market leaving China. Bangladesh can be benefited from China and India from the both sides. This opportunity has been accomplished by the completing administrative, political and structural constructions to bring Chinese low-tech factories to Bangladesh, making Chinese investment industry, energy and infrastructure development, taking full advantage of the ocean-going blue economy in the Bay of Bengal. So in the case of changing regional dynamics regarding Bangladesh-China relations in the 2020, the ongoing Sino-Indian conflict could referable in the geopolitical dimension of South Asia, leading to a new relations in this South Asia regions, opposing the belief that rivalry between China and India makes the relationship with other neighbors vulnerable. Bangladesh emerged a curious cases. So Bangladesh, with its strategic geopolitical locations, huge populations, markets, and manufacturing power, could grasp an opportunity from the ongoing Sino-Indian rival situations. Besides the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, China has stepped with much needed medical applies for Bangladesh. On the other hand, Sylhet, a city of northeastern Bangladesh, is only 50 kilometers from border with India. But when Bangladesh government awarded a $250 million US contract in April 2020 to build a new airport terminal in the city, the Indian dealer lost out of Chinese firm. In June 2020, China granted duty-free access to 97% of Bangladeshi exports. And this month, Bangladesh apparently hopeless for the decade-long negotiation with India on the water sharing pact for the Tista River, asked China to finance almost $1 billion to water management project instead of Tista Treaty. So in Bangladesh now is growing an anti-Indian platform. So even though India played a vital role in independence of Bangladesh, providing arms and training to the nationalists, the relationship began to soar with a few years. In the recent years, the National Registers of Citizens, NRC, the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, Rohingya issue, water sharing, border killings create anxiety and tension in Bangladesh, where a huge number of populations has been historically anti-Indian, and the number is increasing day by day. So China's growing influence on Bangladesh has neutralized much of New Delhi's influence on Dhaka that once is employed. India's counter-offensive against Bangladesh is the arena of diplomacy is a history now. These developments have put Bangladesh in a bargaining position from India and China. India will try its best to prevent away Bangladesh from Chinese sphere of influence. But from now onwards, Bangladesh may like to play hardball with both India and China. It's new script that is being written in Bangladesh, China, India, triangular relationship. But this needs to be watched with more care and much cautions. And I will conclude my speech on a mathematical calculations. So in my suggestions, Bangladesh, China and India triangle relationship equal to competition plus cooperation minus confrontations. So the buzzword like competitive cooperation and competition plus cooperations between China and India are away from the ground in reality in Bangladesh. So I will conclude three quotations from the three head of the state. The Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina told, Bangladesh-India relation is just organic, and we have shed blood together for our independence. It was also beyond billions of dollars of trade. On the other hand, Bangladesh's relationship with China was good, as well as China is our partner in the mega projects and economic advancement. Prime Minister Narendra Modi told, when India and China work together, 1 plus 1 is not 2, but 11. President Xi Jinping told, Chinese dragon and Indian elephant should join each other in a duet, not a duel. So finally, I want to say, if India and China work together in Bangladesh, then this triangle relationship will be very effective for economic development of Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sujit Kumar Datta, for such a detailed presentation. Your major point, which I got from your presentation, is that Bangladesh want to benefit from both China and India equally. Before going to our question and answer session, I would like to request everybody to switch on their camera for a group photo.
Done, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Ahmad. Are we done with the photo? Okay. Thank you, Ahmad.
Yes, ma'am, we are done.
We'll be opening up the question and answer session. Before giving this chance to anyone else, I would like to take a chance to ask the question from all the panelists. How this growing political and economic cooperation between China and other South Asian states can change India's behavior towards its neighbors? Given the fact that India is also becoming a comprehensive strategic and military partner of the US in its Asia-Pacific strategy. So this question is directed to all the panelists. Anyone would like to address the question?
Do we have to raise our hand?
Okay, Professor Shahab, okay.
Let me take this opportunity because
it's not audible,
belong
Professor.
To
it's not audible.
Are you audible? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. The point is, I mean, I belong to a landmass that sits in the belly of many things. So the first thing is, let's put it in this way. There are two types of India. The first is the media, Indian media. The second part is the political India. I mean, when you look into the political India, and I don't think there is much debate about the approach towards the neighbors. And certainly the neighborhood predominantly is determined through the prisms of Kashmir and the border territory, which is essentially linked with India's homegrown insurgencies. Even if you look at the Indian Northeast, and certainly you see a plethora of conflicts arising from there. So that's one major challenge that India has in terms of its own geostrategic compulsions. And perhaps that also pushes it to be much more in better relationship with Myanmar, given the Myanmar and China surrounds the Indian Northeast. So this is a political compulsion that we have to bear in mind. On the other hand, if you look at the Indian media, or perhaps in that case, any Western media too, I mean, demonizing the other is quite a fascinating phenomenon, and you would always see that. I mean, I was recently writing an article by saying the wildly inappropriate views on Bangladesh by the Indian media. Now, certainly, that is again a phenomena which we are now witnessing everywhere. Even if sometimes you get to see that Islamic terrorism became the flagship narrative of the Western media. And sometimes you saw that the South China Sea as the flagship narratives for the Chinese. And even if you look at the radicalization, extremism, and whatnot, becomes the flagship according to the need and the preference of the regimes. And henceforth, even if you look at this Indian media, in many cases, we get to see that overhyping stuff and leading to over-securitization. And I'm quite sure at some point of time, India will have to tame its media in order to give a better picture about itself. Even if you look into the Bollywood, what's happening in Bollywood, even if you look into the soft diplomatic approaches. And perhaps this is where the disconnection lies. Another issue is if you look at the civilizationally, and which is also having a greater connection with all the way Afghanistan to all the way to Rangoon. So which means that we also have certain similarities, and perhaps our political narratives often resort to nationalism. And nationalism is not always about seeing others as an excluded entity, but rather nationalism is all about keeping everybody together with a common vision. And that's something missing. And I'm quite worried about it, that how it is unfolding across the systems. And even the West is not immune to that any longer. So going back to Nabila's question, how the Chinese rise and how Chinese are coming into the play, it's all about market. The Middle Kingdom has always been a trade route, Silk Route, Chinese spices route, even the opium route, even if you demonize opium, but still that was one of the major trading goods in the Far East. And perhaps this has always been, and this is the case for the Arabs too. And Arabs were also been the businessmen. The first mosque in the Indian subcontinent was erected in Kerala. It was not in Pakistan, it was not in Bangladesh, it was not in Afghanistan. But perhaps this is Kerala that hosted the first mosque. Again, if you go back to the civilizational factors, even Pakistan, if you go to Lahore, and Lahore is one of the, I think one of the dormant cosmopolitanism. And perhaps this is the most underrated city in the subcontinent, which I believe. And if you walk down through Lahore, you get to see everything that you want. So what I see is that the Chinese have always understood the necessity for expansion, not only of their trade, but also their culture. Even if you look at the South Asian Islamic phenomena, our remittances doesn't come only with money. Our remittance also comes with the Saudi or the Wahhabi influences. we import that with that money. So perhaps when we look into China, definitely at some point of that culture will come with the renminbi. So this is a very natural phenomena until or unless we learn to protect our own culture, own history. And perhaps I get to hear that Islam is under threat. I mean, come on, I have 90% population Muslims here. You have 90% most population in Pakistan. And I get to see in the social media is that religion is under threat, even in India, that Hinduism is under threat. How? I mean, even if you just go for a massive earthquake, still you will have the 50% alive. So this is a very basic phenomena that we try to ignore. And that's exactly where the Chinese understood that this is not something that will help the Chinese to grow, but rather Chinese understood that if they want to grow, they have to keep this region stable too. Even if you look at India's bilateral trade with China, it's phenomenally large and phenomenally with trade deficit. And this is the same case with Pakistan and Bangladesh, because we don't have the trade complementarities. We don't have the trade diversification. And this is our problem. This is not China's problem. And often I get to hear the Chinese are sending the worst possible product. Why are you buying? If we had the purchase capacity to buy, this is the same Chinese product the Europeans are buying. So if we have the income ability to buy that, we should buy that. But the hardcore reality is economy doesn't permit you to buy that. So henceforth, you're again stuck in the lower recipient of globalization, being even the Chinese dominated globalization. Now, it is very easy to see that the Chinese are coming and eating us up. But on the other hand, we don't have our own protections. And perhaps we are talking about something which we cannot handle. Our leaderships have failed significantly. Our political system has not been able to create our own sustainable economy. And perhaps this is higher time. And that's why I would always love to see that all the nations are talking, at least talking for the rationalization, and sometimes introspection is needed. And this is exactly the time, the COVID is the time, with the Zoom and all the technologies to realize that this is the time that we have to understand things are no longer same. Sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shahab. Now we have two other raised hands. One is Osman Khan Orakzai. I would like to give him the mic to ask the question. Mr. Usman Khan, if you are listening me, kindly switch on your mic.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. My question is from Professor Khan. Sir, what do you want to say about the US observation towards the China and Bangladesh warm relationship? If US has proper trade relation with Bangladesh, especially import. So what do you want to say about this warm relationship and how US feeling about it? And what do you want to say in future, the changing political dynamics of Bangladesh and China relation?
First of all, Osman, this is a fantastic question. I think you have just hit the bullseye, because we get to hear a lot of speculation about the American perception about China-Bangladesh relationship. As I mentioned in my speech, clearly that we have to balance
Shahab,
between
you're not audible.
Am I now?
Yes, you're audible, sir.
Yes, yes.
Still, Islamabad is quite far now. I mean, it takes time for me to throw my speech. So now going back to Usman, I think you have touched the very genesis. The very simple reason is we get to hear that perception and speculation about the US perception about Bangladesh and China's relationship. See, the Chinese are quite meticulous and they're very culturally hardworking nation. So they understand that they have to keep their business alive. And the Americans are equally a new civilization. I mean, although it doesn't qualify to be a civilization, but perhaps given its military might and economic depth and everything, and being the global policeman, certainly this is one of the critical civilizational state by itself. Now, what happens is they also are very well aware of the fact that an unstable Bangladesh or destabilized region is not of anybody's help, unless they really want some sort of war to come in, which I don't think is a practically feasible any longer. Even if any menace within Washington wants to do it, probably this is not going to happen. The very obvious reason is they themselves have to take care of their economy, which is in shambles. And their technological capacity is fantastic in terms of jet fighter, but when it comes to corona vaccine, we have seen that we are no lesser than them. So now altogether, that gives you, and I was writing this by saying that corona is one thing that has made everybody equalized, which means we are all equal. I mean, in terms of death, I mean, you might have a fantastic hospital, but your death rate is as high as mine. I might be in the backward, but still I have much more resilience. So stuff like that is now coming back to our discourse. So this is the reason the Americans are also very well aware of the fact that Bangladesh would require China to go, because it is since 50s and 60s, the Americans stopped investing in infrastructure or providing grants in infrastructure of different countries. And that's where the multilaterals came. And this is the reason why Ford, Kissinger, and all other had different perceptions about their multilateral engagement. And even when our father of the nation went to New York, when he met in Washington with Gerald Ford, and they both discussed that we need the World Bank and others to be strengthened. This is a very fantastic, if you go back to the declassified documents, you will see that. And this is where the whole thing comes in, that the Americans are also well aware of the fact that they haven't invested in these countries to a large extent, except for the arms, which once you shoot, it's gone. So therefore, these are not something that will be sustainable. So Bangladesh just walked through the different path. I mean, and they just took the economic development as their priority. Of course, we have our problems in terms of governance. We have our economic perils, and we certainly have our problems, but still we have done better. And the Americans are part of that too. And Americans were always been a part of Bangladesh's development. And henceforth, they have no problem if the Chinese are coming here. So do not go by the media hype, which essentially creates some sort of ooh, by saying that we will be eaten up by everyone. No, that's not going to happen because we have 170 million people to feed. Does it answer your question, Osman?
Yeah, thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Ma'am Nabila, we cannot hear you.
Thank you, Professor Shahab. Now we have two more questions from Ms. Humaira Iqbal. She's a research analyst at the Institute of Regional Studies.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the most knowledgeable presentations. I have two questions. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I have two questions. I wanted to know from Ambassador Naghmana and Mr. Shahab Enam that how far has Modi's neighborhood first policy been successful in bringing Bangladesh further closer to the advancement of India's regional goal? And how can Bangladesh deal with the growing Chinese influence and the fears emerging among the regional states? Thank you.
Professor Naghmana, would you like to address the question first?
Thank you very much for your question. I have two very simple answers. I think the policy has to be supported and supplemented by actions. So I am afraid that the actions of Mr. Modi does not support his policy statement of good neighborliness at all. And so I don't really think that policy succeeding, because I don't think it has taken off at all. As far as China is concerned, I agree with Professor Datta? Shahab, that yeah, with him that the countries have to develop their own capacities and have to have the put their systems right in order to benefit from what is being offered. And I think the smartest things countries can do is to, what I said in my concluding remarks, also try and find a balance between development, between economic development, social development, and also navigate through the very complicated geopolitical and geostrategic scenarios which are emerging in the region. It is sometimes not very easy for the smaller countries with their limited resources, but here comes the political, let me say, sagacity of the leadership and the people to see how they can benefit from the policies of the bigger powers towards them without succumbing to the intimidation of countries like India. So I hope that I have answered your question.
Yes, ma'am, you have. Thank you.
Ms. Humera, you had asked a question from another speaker as well?
Yes, from Shahab Enam.
Oh, hi. Kumara, can you repeat your question? Kumara, can you repeat your question if it is not a problem?
Yes, why not? My questions were, how far has Modi's neighborhood first policy been successful in bringing Bangladesh further closer to the advancement of India's regional goal? And how can Bangladesh deal with the growing Chinese influence and the fears emerging among the regional states? Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. I think Mr. Modi has crafted a foreign policy which he doesn't believe himself sometimes. So the problem is when it looks into the lookiest, then again, when Bangladesh comes, we often see that the relationship often tilts towards unresolved issues. We still have unresolved issues, but we are working on it. And probably this will be resolved soon enough. What we need to see from Delhi at some point of time is that we have the pending issues that has to be resolved. And starting from water, I mean, these are all available in public domain. You can look into that. Water is there, border killing is there. But certainly, if you look at in terms of the political relationship, in terms of social relationship, or in terms of people-to-people relationship, that has grown exponentially without or with the regimes in power. This is irrespective of regimes, because we have pretty much something like open border. Obviously, now we see that barbed fencing and stuffs are coming, and you would always hear that there is a fencing issue dominating our bilateral discussion. But if you go back to the very ethos of the societies, you would always see that these people are interacting since time immemorial. I mean, we have a lot of places in Bangladesh where between Bangladesh and India, where you see that the drawing room or the dining room is in Bangladesh and the toilet is on the Indian side, or perhaps even the other rooms are in the Indian side. So what does it mean? It means that we still believe in coexistence. So that is going on. So I want to really see Bangladesh's relationship with India through the prism of one or two political parties, or perhaps only the governments in power. Because obviously you have the political interests, political regimes behaving according to their own political interests doesn't necessarily always mean that the public-to-public relationship or the human-to-human relationship or trade-to-trade relationship with India has been hampered. So in a nutshell, Mr. Modi just have to be a little proactive, and probably at some point of time, for the sake of the stability that we will see. And obviously their paranoia about China is overrated. In the media, I don't think Delhi really is very concerned about the Chinese in Bangladesh or the Americans in Bangladesh. And perhaps India has to come up with a better solutions for the regional institutions, so that first of all, we make our own decisions better than making decision towards others better. So this is where the problem lies. So finally, just in one single sentence, is that maybe India's or Mr. Modi's Lookist policy needs a little bit of reform, if that is the word I should use.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Shahab, for addressing the question. Now we have another question from Ms. Mariam Bastoor. I want to give her a chance to ask the question. Mariam.
Thank you, Nabila. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much, panelists, for your wonderful presentations. I would like to ask a question from Professor Lin Minwang. How China views Quad partnership? For Professor Shahab, it's a fancy partnership, but I really would like to know that how China views it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. I remember last year when I joined the DACA dialogue in Bangladesh, and also talking about how China perceives Indo-Pacific strategy. And I think for Chinese government, our policy is very clear. And the foreign minister has said twice about the Indo-Pacific concept. It's a concept which was be used by Trump government, try to organize a new alliance. The purpose is to contentment China's, and this is will have great impact on the regional architectures, and it try to replace the regional architectures in Asia, especially try to replace the ASEAN-centric principles. So this is the general China's perception. So we are very sensitive about the neighboring countries, whether or not these countries was join free and the open Indo-Pacific strategy. This is my brief response to your questions.
Thank you, Professor Minwang. Any other speaker would like to address the same question? Okay, thank you, Professor Minwang. Now we have another question in the chat room. This question has been asked by Sabiha Khalid. She is asking that does the recent attempts by New Delhi indicate fear of losing neighbors to China? And any speaker can answer this question.
So may I just give the brief response to these questions? Compared to China's relation with ASEAN countries, and I can say Chinese economy presence in South Asia is very limited. And you can compare the trade volume China with these South Asian country with such as China's trade volume with Vietnam, which is much larger than China-Indian trade volume. So, but South Asia and the East Asia is quite different. In South Asia, there are only one hegemony, that is India. India's position in these regions has never been challenged by the other countries. But in East Asia, among the ASEAN countries, Indo-Pacific is the leading countries, but he is not the hegemony in these regions because Singapore, because Malaysia and Thailand is not far away from Indonesia. So this is a problem for this region, for South Asia, because India has enjoyed this unprecedented hegemony position for such a long time. And India has always have this empire mindset. It's difficult for India to accept other countries to be present in these regions. I think for China's in these regions, the main reasons is try to have more and more economy cooperation with this region, because we have already have a very deep economic relation with ASEAN, all the ASEAN countries. So we have to find another place, which is the emerging developing countries around China's. So South Asia, most of the South Asians have this potentials for China's economy growth in the futures. So this is the main reasons, I think, for why China has more and more focus on South Asia. This is my brief answers.
Thank you, Professor Minwang. I can see two more questions in the chat room. One question is from Mr. Wasim Sajjad. He is asking that is the investment in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and other South Asian countries is a threat to India's growing economy? Any speaker would like to address this question?
Can you repeat the question, Nabila, if it is not a problem?
Is Chinese investment in Bangladesh and Pakistan and in other South Asian countries is a threat to India's growing economy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I should quote one very interesting comment from our Prime Minister in 2016, probably. She was giving an interview to one of the top newspaper in India, where she indicated that if the Chinese investment or any other investment comes to Bangladesh, will eventually be beneficial for any other neighboring country, particularly India. Because what happens is we go to India for health, we go to India for tourism, we go to India for studies, we go to India for many reasons. So which means we need money to do so. That's one. Second, if we don't have money, then certainly we won't be the largest trading partner contributing to Indian economy. Now, that's exactly what she was referring to by saying that, look, every investment and every positive investment has spillover effect on everyone. As I concluded by saying the choice is very clear, whether you will be with the market economy or you will not be with the market economy. So that is one thing. The second thing is, even if there is an economic growth in Pakistan, obviously that will have a spillover effect in Afghanistan, definitely, for sure. And that's exactly the very basic thesis of peace thesis that shows that more economic integration, more economic cooperation, more trade relations tend to reduce the securitization of relationships. So that means you have to have better trade regimes, investment regimes, in order to facilitate a better growth of economy. Now, whether you're going to politicize that growth or not, this is up to the state's behavior. Now, always remember one very important thing. When you discuss about Pakistan, when you discuss about, this is also, I often tell my friends, that when you discuss about Pakistan, just don't see Pakistan through the prism of military, or just don't see the prism of Islamophobe thinking, or just don't see it through whichever political prejudice you have. You have to see a country through the prism of country. A country becomes independent, there is a reason why it becomes independent. And for that reason, definitely you have to understand that the politicians or the political verbatim is not the representation of society of the time. So therefore, that's why I go back to the Lahore example, that this is the most underrated cosmopolitan in the world. I mean, if you ask me, I mean, if you want the best lassi in the region, go to Lahore. If you want the best biryani and kebab in the region, go to Lahore. It's not Delhi. But if you want to have the best halim or jalebi, come to Delhi. Right. So now that's where, I mean, these are all kitchen things, right? But the kitchen things are something that is linked with you, your tongue. I mean, you don't deny your tongue. I mean, you can always deny Imran Khan or Pervez Musharraf, or I can deny Mr. Modi, but I cannot deny the taste of my tongue. So that's exactly where the whole beauty lies. So what I was suggesting for a long time, that we should have much more understanding of the society, and we should come out of the heavy-headed understanding of the state. And state doesn't really always behave the way you want to behave. So this is exactly the reason. I mean, learn from 1971, learn from 1947, learn from 1905, 1911. These are all benchmarks that show. That's why I was telling that lesson itself is an important thing, and that makes us go ahead. So this is the reason you should go ahead. And this is the reason, I mean, for last 30 years, two fantastic women ruled us. I mean, where would you get? I mean, the Washington is still a long way to go. Pakistan had Benazir Bhutto. Kumar was there. In Sri Lanka, Mrs. Gandhi was in Delhi, helm of power. I mean, all of them are literally iron women. I mean, I would sometimes say much more ruthless than the male ones. So you can see that the very genesis is very much there. The social appreciation for these people to be there. And that makes us much more cosmopolitan than Washington. I mean, of course, you can buy better stuff in Washington, but if you ask that, has anybody become the president of the United States? No. Have you seen anything like that in many other countries that you think as the abode of excellence? So this is exactly where I say that obviously the perception management is needed. And when you explain a state through the multiple prisms. Don't explain a state through the political prism.
Thank you, Professor Shahab. We all wish for peace, stability, and development in the region. We all want to have breakfast in another city and lunch in another and dinner in another city. So we all are wishing for that. Now we have a last question in the chat room. Ms. Nadia Omer is asking a question from Dr. Kumar. She's asking that is Bangladesh growing ties with China is at the expense of its relations with India? Dr. Kumar, would you like to address this question?
Thank you. Actually, it's undoubtful. India is the superpower nations in South Asian regions. in the case of geography, in the case of economy, in the case of population, in the case of military. On the other hand, although India played a crucial role in our liberation war, historically Bangladesh faces two broad external threats from India. One is a threat to territory, and second one is a threat to political independence. On the other case, the beauty of Chinese foreign policy is not to interfere in the others' domestic internal affairs. So since the independence in 1971, Bangladesh has disputed with India over land and maritime boundaries, river sharing, water sharing, NRC and CA. Now, actually, all problems have been solved peacefully by the India-Bangladesh government, except water sharing, NRC and CA issue, and the border killings. So, in the case of economic perspective, Bangladesh government wants to collaborate with China for the mega projects. Now, Bangladesh governments are dealing various mega projects. So, India is facing its own internal problems because India is not capable to invest more money in Bangladesh in like that mega project. So Bangladesh have no alternative way. But on other case, China has lots of money. So in the China has eagerly waiting to invest our mega project too. So in the case of Bangladesh-China relations on the basis of economics, but in the other case, Bangladesh-India relations is historically in the relations relate with our bloods, our independence, in the case of geographical locations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sujit Kumar. Now we are already running out of time. Now I want to give the floor to Mr. Imran Sardar. He is a research analyst at the Institute of Regional Studies. He would be concluding the session. So thank you all the speakers for participating in today's webinar.
Thank you, Nabila. It's always pleasure and nice to hear directly from Bangladesh and Chinese speakers. Following the Chinese strategic supremacy in the border conflict with India in June 2020, Beijing's relations with India's neighborhood first countries are in the spotlight again. In the backdrop of this changing geopolitical dimension of South Asia, although just changing the geopolitical dimension has become a buzzword today, Bangladesh appears to be a wonderful case study. Bangladesh is an important country for India, and both have maintained close relationship with each other since 1971. Yet Dhaka is also desperate to lessen its burden on India. This is also a truth. Bangladesh Lookist policy has essentially been designed to meet that target. And the recent Chinese overtures seems to be long awaited by Dhaka. India has also started ramping up its relations with Dhaka, arguably to neutralize the Chinese influence. Apart, the United States also give importance to its relations with Bangladesh and consider it a key partner in the Indo-Pacific strategy. So dealing with China amidst growing competition and frictions between China and the United States would not be easy for Bangladesh. Bangladesh has been very, very calculated in dealing with China in the past. But with the deepening Chinese role in the region amidst US and India's growing opposition, how bilateral relationship between the China and the Bangladesh will shape up in the long run is $1 million question. But what I see, Bangladesh would continue with its counterbalancing policies to maintain its relations with both India and China. However, Bangladesh requires a lot of homework to dispel the negativity and counter the disinformation. I'm not talking about the misinformation, disinformation about Chinese inroads to Dhaka. And the last but not the least, why the Bangladesh is so important, because since Bangladesh has its close relations with India, the way Dhaka deals with China in the future will serve a model for other states that are under asymmetric interdependence with India. So wish you good luck, Dhaka, and hopefully you will lead and you will be a model for other small states of the South Asia like Nepal, Bhutan, and Maldives. With these concluding remarks, and thank you very much. Thank you. Over to Nabila.
Thank you, Imran. I thank you, especially we are very thankful to the foreign speakers and also we are grateful to other participants for today's webinar. We are hoping for the growth and development in the region together. So this was the end, and thank you all for participating. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.